Started. So Jeannie, whenever you're ready.
Take it away.
All right. Well, welcome everyone to the 2020 MPSMA annual conference. We have had several presentations leading up to this point, but this is actually kind of our condensed, this is the actual conference that, so for our lineup, we've got, of course, today, and hope you can join us again tomorrow, same time. And then again, next Friday for our student presentations. All right, so just a few things I wanted to remind everyone about, just ways to keep current with PSM. Be sure to look out for announcements coming into through your email from the PSM monthly news. There's an opportunity for you to feature your PSM alumni and graduates through the Chronicle. And you should get reminders again about this through the PSM news that gets emailed to all members. And also, again, just be sure to check out our innovator. We have great articles coming out of this. We share best practices. And you can look for the upcoming 2021 PSM news issues for an opportunity for you to submit a manuscript. Right, and then just again, a reminder, if you'd like to highlight your students and alumni, we just released our Chronicle for the PSM alumni and graduation issue, which is available now. And you can send your submissions for the next issue in 2021 to this address here. And if you're interested in volunteering, we'd love to have you serve on one of our MPSMA committees. And you can contact any of the board members, myself. There's several of us here on the presentation today, or you can email this address here. We'll make sure these are available afterwards. And just, I wanted to point out some of the additional membership benefits that are available. Of course, there are reduced rates to our national conference, and hopefully we will be able to join, everyone will be able to come together in 2021 in Tampa, Florida in November. There are certainly presentation opportunities for students at the conference. Of course, we have a really close relationship with the Council of Graduate Schools, which has resulted in a presentation opportunity and an NSF grant. One of which that is funding our workshop for the conference being held next year, again, hopefully in Tampa. We also offer monthly Ask MPSMA webinars, which are set up just like this one, where you can come in and listen from experts regarding various topics that are related to PSM programs. We do have a YouTube channel where you can find some of these archived and recorded. And then we've had a couple of these virtual recruitment fairs. We're going to be offering these every fall and spring. And the April event had 153 registrants. So it's definitely worth checking out. And then finally, join the PSM Slack channel. This is where we're all coming in, joining. This is where you can network, ask questions at any time, and kind of follow discussions that are surrounding PSM programs. We are, of course, on social media, so if you are a part of any of these, please be sure to find us and connect and stay connected. Once again, we hope to see you in November. And thank you all for joining today. I'm going to pass it on to Ray.
All right, have to find the unmute button there. So let me share my screen really quickly and do some introductions. I'd like to say welcome as well to this year's conference, and this is our opening session. And so the first thing that I'd like to do is just give a brief introduction to our speakers. So this topic hopefully is somewhat timely when we're still working within this crisis. And I think many of us have been looking at how we can use technology to deliver high quality graduate education. And over the past spring, when we were asked to convert typical face-to-face courses to online, we only had 2 weeks to do it. And so now we're in a new stage where we've got time, we're thinking about the process. And so I thought it would be, this session came out of the idea of, well, what are people doing that have been using online technology? What are some of the things that have come out of distance learning? And then also, what are some of the, as a science and technology program, we have a lot of hands-on activities. And so finding out what people are doing to move what would normally be a very intensive face-to-face experience into an online format is something that we wanted to talk about and bring to the group. And so with that, I just want to say I'm really happy to introduce the panel for today's session. So Dr. Kristin Kuter, Dr. Barbara Wilson, and Dr. Judy Brown. So just some brief introductions. Dr. Kristin Kuter is an associate professor of mathematics, and she's the former director of the Masters of Science in Data Science PSM at St. Mary's College. And so she's going to be, she'll share her work in developing and managing a fully online program and providing some guidance on how we should do this within our programs. So Dr. Barbara Wilson is the immediate past dean of the College of Nursing at the University of Utah, and she will discuss their college's distance learning programs and provide an overview for the motivation, the technical challenges and successes in delivering a highly experiential content within the healthcare profession. And finally, Dr. Judy Brown will share her program's experience with the spring semester and what practices she's adopted as she's moved into a laboratory-based program with her PSM. And so with that, I'm going to ask Dr. Kristin Kuter if she would like to take the lead in presenting, giving a brief overview. Kind of the plan here is to have each speaker give us a 5 to 10 minute overview of their programs, their challenges, and then we'll have plenty of time to ask questions as a group about in a panel discussion. So with that, Kristin, could you take over?
Will do. Okay, I didn't get the memo to use a dark blue or purple background, so I have a light blue background. Hopefully everybody can see that. Okay, so as Ray said, I am going to talk about my experience, what we learned, kind of how I applied what we learned in other classes before the pandemic and then also during the pandemic, specifically focusing on the development of our fully online graduate program, as Ray mentioned. I put in a slide on my background, not remembering that Ray was going to introduce us. So as Ray said, I am at St. Mary's College in Notre Dame, Indiana. I teach primarily probability and statistics. That's my area of focus. And I was the first program director for our PSM program in data science, which I stepped out of that role just last year and am now the chair of our math and computer science department. So first of all, let me share a little bit about St. Mary's. If you're not familiar, St. Mary's is a small women's Catholic liberal arts college. We're primarily undergraduate institution. We pride ourselves on our one-on-one interaction with students because we are small. We are able to do that. In 2015, we launched, though, 3 graduate programs, of which one was our Master of Science and Data Science program. And before that, the institution had no graduate programs to speak of. And so there was no infrastructure whatsoever. We had to build everything from the ground up. Luckily enough, in data science, I was part of a team that was able to successfully secure some grant funding within from an organization within the state, and so that helped us quite a bit provide some resources to develop the program. We were on a pretty tight timeline. Oh, so right, the program we started developing in 2014, which is when we were able to get a grant to help us, fund that development stage. But we were put on a fairly accelerated timeline in the sense that we had a year to get ready to launch our graduate program. And remember, we started from basically nothing. So it was a sprint, I would say. And to add to that, the faculty, including me, the team of faculty that was focused on developing our graduate program in data science, throughout all of our conversation leading up to getting that grant in 2014, what we envisioned was a traditional on-campus face-to-face program. But the administration had a different idea, and we did not make the decision. Our administration decided that we should launch our program fully online from the beginning. So needless to say, we had lots and lots of challenges to deal with. But of course, for this session, I am just focusing on those that most directly relate to developing and delivering an online program. So there's a couple challenges I'm going to highlight and talk about some of the solutions that we came up with, provide some tips, and then I'm going to end with the tools that I use the most in teaching online. That some of them folks may know about, and others may not be as widely known. So the very first challenge, of course, developing an online program, is training faculty to teach online. With St. Mary's being we're a on-campus, residential undergraduate institution, so teaching online was very new to most of the faculty that were involved in developing and teaching the graduate program. And so, with the past, the events of this year, a lot of faculty can relate to that feeling of being, thrust into this new experiment, trying to completely shift how you're going to deliver your content from what you may have been used to for years or decades, in person, face to face, to now solely online at a distance. And so not only does that take a lot of time and resources to figure out how you're going to make that adjustment and teach still effectively. At St. Mary's, as I said, we're small. We pride ourselves on that high touch experience with our students. So how are we going to do that now online efficiently and effectively? And again, we had a year, which is more right than some folks had this year in shifting online as a result of the pandemic. But it still was a very accelerated timeline. And of course, we were still teaching other courses as we were trying to develop and get ready for this brand new online graduate program. But what we found that worked really well, and we had some luxuries, was you need adequate support and resources, of course, upfront before you are actually launching your online courses. You need time to train the faculty, and the faculty need time to plan and develop how they're going to implement those new tools and techniques that they're learning about within their courses. So as I said, we had that grant, so we were actually able to fund an instructional designer to be hired to work at the college, solely focused on supporting graduate faculty. And so we took advantage of that in that year we had to get ready for the launch of the program, and we arranged weekly tutorials with that individual so that she could show us, the tools and the technology that was out there how to utilize fully all the capabilities of our learning management system, et cetera, et cetera. So that was one full semester, faculty sort of attending a class every week. And then the next semester was then focused on how are we going to use those tools and build up and develop our specific courses. Of course, that requires time on the faculty side. So, right, you have to incentivize this training and development for the faculty. And so we were able, again, through our grant funding, to provide course releases to the faculty that were going through this training and development to teach online. And we also worked with the administration to make sure that this effort was recognized when faculty were going up for tenure or promotion, to recognize that this was not just a simple switch that you can flip to go from teaching face-to-face to teaching online. It is a lot of work, and can be argued that it is a scholarship activity. And then after we, launched the program and had more experience teaching online, we create a culture of faculty teaching faculty. And so we hold regular workshops or retreats or technology showcases throughout the year where faculty can, share a tool that they discovered over the past semester or summer and have used and found really helpful, and they can share it with other faculty. The other challenge that's more specific to my program was, how do we figure out how to deliver technical content remotely? How do we work with students who are going to have to heavily rely on hardware and software, and may have issues with those, but aren't physically present for us to help them troubleshoot. And so we were really worried about that. And then also, mathematics is not easy to typeset. So there's some difficulty in writing math equations in just a word editor. There's ways to do it, but it can be very tedious. And so we had to figure out, how are we going to deliver this content that's extremely mathematical, extremely technical, and then how are we going to have students communicate their work back to us? And so a couple of solutions that we initially came up with was to at least deal with the software issue. Was we created a virtual machine that housed all of the software that students would need for the program, so that we managed its installation, if you will, and then distributed it to all the students. So we didn't have to worry about troubleshooting installation of software on their own machines. For that second issue with typesetting math expressions, we got tablets. Tablets are very ubiquitous right now, but 6 years ago maybe they were. But so faculty got tablets so they could write on the screen, and didn't have to worry about working with students remotely and typesetting math as they're chatting or working on a problem. And then students were encouraged to purchase scanners. There's something called a live scribe pen, where you can actually write on a piece of paper and it will convert that into an electronic document. But these were our initial solutions. And as the years have gone and technology is catching up with teaching math and science and very technical stuff online, improved solutions. One, we did away with our virtual machine because we found that it didn't work very well, in the sense that it was slow. It depended completely on the type of machine and the specifications that students had on their own computer. And so we've actually found through the years, most of the software that we use is open source and freely available, and the students really haven't had too much difficulty downloading and putting it on their machines, as long as they have the right setup on their computer. And so what's really important actually is to establish online learning technology requirements that specifically say, you need this much memory on your computer, you need this, you know, minimum level of processing power, et cetera, et cetera. You need a webcam, you need a microphone, those simple kind of things you need to make upfront to the students before they get started, so that they have all the materials and are aware of what they're going to need for budgeting. And then for getting homework and getting the technical work from the students, this is a more recent solution I've been introduced to, this GradeScope.com application, which I can't speak praises enough about this. For anybody who has to grade still, it just makes it so much more efficient, and it's awesome. The other challenge, and I know that I think I'm running long, I need to wrap this up pretty quick to let the others speak, but the other challenge I wanted to highlight was creating engagement and creating community amongst the students when we're working remotely. And this was especially challenging for us because we've developed our program to be run asynchronous, because it's online across the nation. Students are on different time zones. We just didn't want to deal with having, you know, different time zones and having, and most of our students are working adults, and so they fit school into their schedule rather than trying to schedule around a specific class. And so some of the things that we've done is we actually do require the students to come to campus in person regularly throughout their time in the program, so that we can, you know, facilitate building that community in person. I wanted to give a shout out to new technology, though, because this may not be possible, especially when a pandemic is happening. This came up in a board meeting, this gather.town website, which they refer to it as a proximity video chat. And so it's basically a Zoom meeting that you can kind of walk around and have little conversations with folks, and not the entire group all at once. So I'm excited I was excited to learn about that, to possibly, you know, hold orientation activities remotely when we can't bring students to campus. And then of course, discussion forums, you know, having, you know, the Slack, there's discussion forums built into learning management systems, ways to, you know, facilitate conversation among students. And then the last slide here is just, again, my favorite tools. So the last item here is actually online annotation. It's called Hypothesis. This is a website. This is an alternative to just having a static discussion forum in an online class. You can actually annotate on any website. So I use a lot of open educational resources, online textbooks. And so this is a way to actually have students engage with an online textbook and each other. It's a super helpful tool, I found. And then video and screen recording, Explain Everything is a really useful tool, and Camtasia for editing. And I should stop. My time is way up.
All right, Kristin, I do want to thank you, and we'll be able to come back for questions. So with that, I'd like to move on to our second speaker. So I'm going to take control of the screen here. Okay, so can everyone see the Barbara's slides here?
Yep, I can.
Thank you, Tim. So Barbara, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you. And I want to thank Ray for inviting me. This is really exciting. I'll tell you a little bit about the College University of Utah and then the College of Nursing before we go on. The university has about 33,000 students, and ironically, it's the biggest enrollment we've ever had this fall and the most diverse freshman class. So despite the pandemic, I think the university is going strong. College of Nursing, we have about between 750 and 775 students at any given time. We have the only PhD nursing program in the state. We have 8 DNP, Doctor of Nursing Practice specialty tracks, an interdisciplinary gerontology program, 3 tracks in our baccalaureate pre-licensure program, and 3 master's tracks, as well as 9 certificate programs. So pretty big program. Next. So what I thought I'd do today is just quickly talk about, first of all, lessons learned from COVID. We have been doing distance education for quite a while pre-COVID, but certainly COVID upped the game for all of us, and I'll talk about some of the effects it had on us. A little bit about our distance accessible programs, and then some of the challenges and successes we've had. So next. Okay, so this was such a great opportunity. About 3 years ago, I had the opportunity to spend some time at the Wharton Business School. And this woman, Kathy Pearson, and granted, this is 2017, right? Long before COVID. And she said, you know, the 2 industries most ripe for radical disruption are banking and higher education, and yet, you know, they're not ready. And she challenged us. She said, think about the last time you went to a bank to get money or to transfer money. And she said, there's this in higher education, for some reason, we assume that everyone must come physically to a brick and mortar building to get quality education. And she said, I think it's going to be a problem. Well, at the time I was Associate Dean for Academic Programs, and I've been in that position since early 2012. And it really struck me, you know, we've been doing a lot in online education, but I thought we have got to up our game. And especially in nursing, we have advanced practice clinicians. And I'm hearing a echo. Is there an echo? Is it just me?
No, it's.
I think, Dagmar, I think you have your mute off.
Thank you. That's better. Thank you. Anyway, in nursing, you know, because we have so many advanced practice clinicians, we know that when we take a student from a rural or frontier area and bring them to the College of Nursing, bring them to an urban area, they're least likely to go home. And because there's such a shortage of providers in rural areas, it's really a disservice to think, okay, to get an education, you've got to come up to us, you know, in the metropolitan area, and then good luck. You know, we hope you're willing to go back home. So for us, the opportunity to educate in place, I've realized for a long time, is really important to handle the provider shortage. So I do think we're ripe for disruption. And I think there's a saying I heard that pain drives change. Without pain, there will be no change. I think COVID was a pain point for a lot of us, but I think it also exposed both strengths and weaknesses that we have in our current educational structure. Number 2 is we can't define success in education the same way we did 10 years ago. I think just like businesses, we have to view education as innovation. You know, you think 10 years ago, would you have given a credit card to a complete stranger, gotten into his or her own car and driven away? You know, the 2 things we tell our kids are don't get into a car you don't know, and never sleep over to strangers' house. And yet Airbnb, Uber, Lyft, I mean, they were radical disruptions that changed business. You look at Amazon, you know, that we can quickly buy something online. They've changed consumer practices. So this thought that education can never change is kind of absurd, I think, and I'm not talking about narrated PowerPoints. I think quality online education is actually harder and more expensive than traditional education, but because it requires a lot of training and it requires a lot of innovation. And I'll talk a little more about that. We're not drastically changing where we're heading, we're changing how we get there. So to me, I think when we made a really conscientious decision, and again, this was pre-COVID, to really up our online game, our distance education, people have to know this is our North Star. This is one of the things that we think we can do. And does everyone have the vision and the drive to get there? And not everyone's up for this. I think managing uncertainty requires a really high tolerance for experimentation. Look at Amazon, look at Uber, look at Airbnb, right? Someone had to have said when they thought this crazy idea that people would give a stranger your credit card and drive away with them. I imagine a lot of people were pretty uncomfortable with that idea, right? But it's people pushing the envelope that are innovators and changers. Next slide. So about our programs, we have an RN to BS. So these are for nurses that already have a license but are getting a baccalaureate degree, which is the recommended level by the Institute of Medicine. In fact, that 80% of all nurses should have a minimum of a BSN. So we've had an asynchronous program for almost 20 years. And again, that's the fact that nurses with a degree are already working. They work day shift, they work night shift, they work swing shifts. So to have a program where you physically have to go somewhere else to get educated just wasn't the answer. It's been highly successful. We've actually got some funding to have a capped program so that it's 260 a credit hour for a 30 credit hour program. So students can get a baccalaureate degree for less than $7,800, which is pretty great. So we're both high quality and low cost, and that's exciting for us. Our masters, again, we have 3 tracks in the nursing program and a gerontology interdisciplinary track. They are all 100% asynchronous. Like Kristin, we do have sometimes where we like them to meet synchronously. We do not require them to come on campus because they're all over the country, but we do like to use different strategies so we can develop a cohort model, a community model. As I mentioned, our DNP, we have several tracks. We use interactive video conferencing. And this is a little tough. You know, nursing, of course, is a hands-on practice degree, right? And although you can't replicate direct patient contact, there's amazing things with simulation and haptics in terms of catheterizing a patient, feeling it without actually having a patient. That doesn't say that it replaces it, but it says that there's a lot we can do to prepare our graduates before they get in the clinical setting to be ready to care for patients. So any student that lives greater than 60 miles from our campus can attend our program via live interactive video conferencing. This requires a fair amount of support. We'll talk about that in a second. But we have, again, 8 tracks. We are starting a DNP PhD this fall, and those students can all attend remotely. And then our PhD, we also use an interactive video platform, but that one is HIPAA compliant because of the nature of some of the information that's shared. That program resulted from a grant that was funded in 2004 and has been synchronous interactive video conferencing since then. And we literally have students from around the world that attend that. Next slide. Challenges. So I agree with Kristin 100%. You have to have support. Again, we're about 750 students. We have 5 in-house full-time IT people. One of those people is a videographer, so they help faculty with some videotaping. We have a full-time embedded instructional designer. She's been there. I hired her in 2015 or 2016. Quality is important. I think, and we've all seen that, some people really pivoted very, very well with COVID, and some people, you know, you see it in students' feedback, didn't do so well. But I agree that students need to know what the distance accessible requirements are. In fact, for our interactive video conferencing classes, our IT meets with every student before they enter the program to make sure that they have the appropriate bandwidth and the computer program to make them a successful student. Lots of ongoing educational support for both students and faculty. Like Kristin, we do have weekly updates. We have monthly seminars. Our embedded instructional designer sends out weekly Canvas updates. That's our learning management platform. So this is how you embed a link. This is how you embed something in your course. This is how you, design rubrics that make sure that you're achieving program completion outcomes. And so it is expensive. Again, I think a quality online program is probably more time consuming and more expensive than traditional, but I think it is more respectful of the kind of learners that we're likely to have. And, I didn't ever live on campus, the college experience, and so I know online isn't for everybody. Some students, it's important that on-campus experience, but there's a lot of us that, I have small children when I was getting my degrees and worked full-time. So the thought that everyone needs to come to us, I think we have to get past that. Last slide. So again, for us, it's really important that we give rural students the opportunity to educate in place. I think we have to push faculty, I mean, I'm embarrassed to tell you, when I first started, we had faculty still using the transparency and putting them on an overhead projector. I mean, that is so old school, and our learners are demanding more. And I think we do have to push our faculty in new ways. Students can achieve program completion outcomes. We have seen this. We have seen, in fact, increase both course and student evals in our programs with high quality education. And I think it, of course, allows flexibility and convenience for our learners. And so, last slide, I think that's it for me. That's my picture of Florence wearing a mask. So.
I'm trying to find my unmute button again. Thank you. That was great. We'll come back. We'll come back for questions in a moment. And Judy, are you ready there?
No, my host disabled attendee screen share is not working. Jeannie.
Just 1 second, Judy.
If everybody would like to just take a big stretch.
Oh, there we go.
There we go. Get some blood flowing. Everybody
Judy, you should be good to go.
Okay, I think we got you as a co-host now.
All right. I promise you will not be bored. All right. I just need to get on.
And we can see you.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. So thank you very much for the invitation to share a little bit about what we've been doing here at our university. I think mine's a little bit different than Kristin's and Barbara's, but that's okay. I'm always a little bit different for those of you that know me. So most presentations start with a disclosure. Mine is no different. For those of you that don't know me, and for those of you that do, I think you'll appreciate that I do spend a bit of time watching videos. I create fun activities, and this is considered working. So I consider myself lucky. I'm also a creative lab nerd. Not everybody can say that. So take it with a grain of salt when I show you what we've been up to at UConn. I also have an above average ability with some computer applications, and it's fair to say that not everybody does, as Barbara just said. Some people are still using those floppy mimeograph, I don't even know what they're called anymore, I forgot. But I also have high standards. So even though we're having fun, I do expect our lab attendees to perform and meet high standards as if they were in a clinical lab. And I don't mind sharing. So why reinvent the wheel? And I can't wait to show you what we've been up to here at UConn. I'm not going to tell you a whole lot about our program. It is a PSM, which, as you know, is one of the best programs out there. It is in healthcare genetics. It blends both science with experiential. gearing the students towards careers in some application of healthcare and or genetics, either at the lab bench, in education, research, development, and so on and so forth. But here comes the news from our president saying the campus is closed. I'm a director and I have 8 credits of lab to deliver. I have 5 credits of professional development and the campus is closed. What am I going to do? Well, after an initial freak out, I say, okay, I'm not a stranger to online learning. We've slowly been incorporating it into our program over the years because that's the way our working students wanted to see a lot of our program happen. But how do you teach pipetting virtually? And how do you grow cells virtually? So I said, it's time to hit my sticky notes and it's time to figure out a plan. So here were the 3 courses I needed to get online. One is Theory and Practice of Clinical Genomics, where we're doing DNA diagnostics. The other is Principles of Mammalian Cell Culture. And the last is Career Preparation. So I can tell you a little bit about what we've done. And this is for 10 students. So here are my sticky notes. Where am I going to start? If you're a bit overwhelmed, these are some ideas. As mentioned in some of our previous presentations, oftentimes universities will have a center or a place to help with course development support. There are Quality Matters guidelines for developing online courses. Even if you don't use the center, if you get the paperwork, it'll help you with a step-by-step direction so you're not completely staring at a blank screen going, where do I start? The accreditation body, if you are accredited by an external agency, they're going to talk with you about the standards that have to be met and how flexible they can be. But there are also other directors out there that have to meet these standards. And we tend to be a collaborative group, so we're going to share ideas with each other. We belong to professional organizations, many of which provide continuing education units to those of us that have certifications. So these continuing education units come in the form of webinars or journal clubs or, online trainings with respect to ethics and so on and so forth. Now they're being made more widely available, either free or for lower costs. And this was happening automatically for some organizations, and for others, you just reached out. I reached out and said, hey, listen, I really need access to X, Y, or Z. Can you work with me? Also, the teaching organizations, which I'll talk about a little bit more on my next slide, they're a good resource. So colleagues, let's collaborate, let's commiserate. What works, what doesn't? You're all just sitting there and I made you stretch because we're getting zoomed out. Well, maintaining connections and meeting at that microwave over lunch or at the cooler, that's not happening. But it's important for all of us to chat and communicate. This is where the brainstorm happens. This is where the ideas flow. So how do we make that work, but not give us zoned out Zoom? And what I have been finding that works is, being the science dork that I am, is having science themed meetings where wear your favorite science t-shirts or bring your favorite science socks, or, you know, bring a glass of wine and have a science cartoon to start off a conference. But the conference does not have an agenda. It's, hey, let's just chat, commiserate, and come up with new ideas. And that's where most of mine have come from. Your employer advisory board, part of the PSM, they can empathize, but they can also advise. They have great ideas on how they train at the bench for those that don't come out of programs. They may be able to give you some ideas as well. And then guess what we forget? Students, they're a great resource. They can Google faster than any of us. So I created a Google Sheet. So I gave all my students access and I said, hey, we've got to learn online. Find us ways that we can do this that are educational, interactive, and put them up in this Google Sheet and I'll start scanning through them. So they did a lot of the homework for me. I mentioned teaching resources and organizations because many of us came into academia from our science background. We weren't trained as educators, if you will. So now's the time to get it right. Let's figure out how to get online and do it well. And there are organizations that have a lot of this ready for us. And I've listed a few here. I presume these are going to be available for everybody to have after our meeting. The big one that I like to share is the National Center for Case Study Teaching in Science. And we all have different disciplines in our PSM, but there's 884 case-based learning options within this particular resource that we can adapt for our needs or use directly from there. PBS and Nova, we've all watched some great shows. They're a great place to start when you're doing virtual learning. Again, as I mentioned, in PSM programs, we all have our own discipline-specific scientific areas, and you all know your top organizations or your top agencies. Go to them, check them out on the websites, or call them directly and see what they have for you for ideas to help build into your learning management platform or to use directly. Oftentimes they'll even volunteer to provide some educational options for you virtually. The CDC has lab training. There's a national organization that provides public health training. The World Health Organization, Access Medicine, and a few others that are listed here are just some of the ones that I've used that are general biology, general lab. And then videos. We all like to use videos, and YouTube has gazillions of them. Don't sit down and watch them all. There's some pretty bad ones out there. Go to your companies, the ones where you buy your reagents, or you buy your equipment, or you buy your supplies. Those are the companies that may already have set up for you educational pages. So from Thermo Fisher, I earned a certificate in cell culture basics. And in Vitrogen, I can get my master's in molecular biology. They have all of this put together for you. Our professional organizations, those of us that belong to them, they have webinars. They have had them for get-goes, but now they also include learning objectives and assessments. The Khan Academy, all those students studying for the MCATs, there's a lot of useful information for those of us at the graduate level as well. Now, laboratory objectives. Our program has 8 credits worth of lab that we have to meet, and they have to be competent. How am I going to do this? I know I can't meet them all, but if I look at my objectives and I think creatively, I might be able to get there as much as I can. And if I communicate constantly with our workforce partners and our employer advisory board, they're going to be well aware of what our graduates will have when they're finished. So I used a lot of different applications or resources, if you will, most of them being housed within our learning management system called Blackboard or Husky CT. I've shown you, I'm going to show you some examples of virtual learning by Lab Exchange. There's others, Collaborate, Kaltura, Benchling, and so on that are listed here. The thing that I do differently, Barbara, than what you mentioned is that rather than emailing students with the how-tos and the updates, is I have one site where all of this gets posted and it stays there indefinitely. So they're not getting drowned in emails as information comes available. So here we are. We're wondering, oh my goodness, what are we going to do here at UConn? So one of my graduate students put together this short little clip for me that I want to share.
Impacted schools across the world as they close their premises to prevent the spread of infection. Many professors have sought innovative and creative ways to provide students with a learning experience that will be memorable and useful in a distant setting. One of the most difficult areas to replicate is a laboratory environment. Thanks to creative minds, we have been able to imitate these aspects to help students get a better understanding of life in a lab from home. The simulation provided by Lab Exchange provides students an opportunity to practice a restriction enzyme digest in a virtual lab setting. Not only does this simulation provide technical feedback, it helps users visualize the use of a micropipette in a virtual lab setting. In Dr. Brown's Principles of Mammalian Cell Culture class, students mimicked sterile hood technique using household items such as turkey basters for pipettes, water bottles and other containers as culture tubes, and salad dressing containers with straws to get a feel for self-feeding and proper flask handling.
So I have to thank my graduate student for putting that together for us. Again, it's actionable verbs, measurable objectives, it's interactive, it's doing something. That's what I'm trying to get here with my lab courses. So I walked around and I said to myself, what do I do during my lab days? And we have lab meetings. So how can I mimic that with an online course? And I put that into a discussion board, and we post questions that the students have to work out among themselves. I use the training videos that you've seen from the other companies. The first ones have guided notes from me. And then later, each of the students, either individually or as a group, will provide critiques. And they can do this as a group through one of the applications we call Collaborate. The practical applications, the hands-on, let's get working. I worked with one of my graduate students to come up with a laboratory operating procedure where we said, let's use your kitchen table as a biological safety cabinet. So you can see in the lower right here, a picture of Jared, who's marked off his kitchen table with the dimensions of the hood. He's used a string to mimic where the safety shield would be. And in the top, you can see where Michaela doesn't have access to real lab gloves. She's using her pink dishwashing gloves. But it's to mimic the process. It's to give you that muscle memory. And the students will tape themselves on their cell phones or their computers, and they'll post it up to a media channel on Kaltura, and then they get to critique each other, change their procedures, and redo to get more and more of that muscle memory. The other lab techniques that we have are writing a standard operating procedure. Notice that action verb again. Calculating for cell viability assays. We want to review videos about automation because in fact, that's the way much of lab is moving, but we obviously can't do that at home. Flipgrid. How about having a tough conversation with a coworker about why we can't sing in the cell culture lab? For those of you that don't know the answer, it's because it spreads something called mycoplasma. So it's a professional development opportunity in a cell culture lab class. We do blogs for journal articles. We interpret electropherograms, rely on your employer advisory board and workforce partners. If you don't do this lab work on a daily basis, they will gladly share with you de-identified images that you can use. We've had Zoom classes that we do genome database analysis with, and I use screen capture a lot. So our assessments, I try to use multiple choice whenever I can to mimic our certifications exams. Some assignments will have peer review components, such as a standing operating procedure. We use Benchling, which is a free electronic lab notebook. And then for those projects that the students would benefit from sharing with others and from reflections, I use a program called Portfolium, and I'll provide that link for you on the next slide. And the last assignment, as you can see here in cell culture, was to clean out the incubator, clean out the hood, and to check out what new innovations have happened within PubMed. So as I close out my slide, just a few quick reviews. On the right, you can see the portfolium.com platform, and Gabe Salas here has posted some of his projects for our program. Overall, there's not been mutiny. Videos are helpful, but they can't be on their own. They need some type of supplementation. Don't overdo them. Include the video view times. Always giving constant feedback with options for delivery, whether it's a voicemail that you leave for students on their Husky CT, an email, or a group message if you like. For future, I'm going to reach out to my companies and say, can I have your out-of-use pipettes? Can I rinse out and decontaminate media bottles to deliver to the new incoming batch of students? And then I'm going to share these videos with our workforce partners, hoping that I'll get more ideas from them. And then the students have asked that I have some homemade me movies so they can see what's expected. So at the bottom of this slide, you'll see the telomere sequence and the telomere shoelaces, and that means it's the end. So thank you.
All right. Thank you, Judy. So I feel like I want to first off thank everyone. I know we went a little bit long. We got started just a little bit late, but at this point, I do want to open up to the questions. If you hit your space bar, you should be able to. Well, first off, either a couple of ways. You can put it into the chat. If you have a question, it might be best if you use the raise your hand feature, if you have that available, or I think I can see everyone. You can raise your hand on the screen and I can call you, identify you, and you can ask a question. So I'll open up the floor for questions.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Dagmar. There we go. You got the hand up.
Kristin, you mentioned that GatherTown software platform for meetings or, online maybe receptions or other type of events. Have you checked that out a little bit more to see how it works and whether it's hard to use? We have looked at it a little bit to potentially use for our annual reception. And it looks like a Mario type old-fashioned computer game. And the website shows young people using it, and as we will have corporate representatives and faculty and board members, I wasn't sure whether this is a little bit too childish, for those type of folks, or whether they actually would enjoy being on a platform like that, because it's a little bit different than the regular, Zoom things. What I really liked about it was that you'd be in this space, and then if you get close to another little avatar in the space, that 2 chat boxes will open up on the screen, and then you can talk to each other and introduce each other, just like if you are at a reception and you walk up to somebody and say, I'm such and such, and what do you do here, or something like that. So I was just wondering whether anybody had used that platform or maybe knows of a similar one that would be a potential good fit for a, kind of a corporate reception event that we can do virtually.
Well, I'll just say I haven't actually had a chance to use it officially. I've just played around with it since we just learned about it like a month or 2 ago, maybe. I just would highlight that Deborah's used it in conferences in the chat, and I don't know of anything else for like a corporate. I would still use that tool, I think.
Maybe Deborah can
yeah, no, I was just at a conference and they used it for a reception. Now, it was an electronic conference, an IEEE, but these were adults. They were not children, they were not kids. And yes, it is like Pac-Man-like because the avatars you move around with, but it was nice that people were in this like reception hall. So I actually, of all the new tools that I tried, and there have been a lot of ones that have come my way, I thought that was the best and not that expensive for what was being there. So yes, I was actually looking at it to use it for my reception as well.
Okay, good. Okay, well, let's,
yeah.
So I would do some more digging then and see whether we want to go for it. Thanks.
Dagmar, I know Marcel also used it very recently, so he might be somebody else to ask about it.
Okay, all right, thank you.
So Judy, I have a question for you. In terms of how did the students receive the working from home in terms of doing these exercises? Were they like enthusiastic about making the effort, or were they feeling, did you get any flack about this not being an educational experience they wanted?
I had both, Ray, and I think the take-home message is to make sure that they do a reflection on the activity. Because from that reflection, I was then able to gather them all and say, look at your reflections, and there is the learning objective. So their reflections were, I didn't see how this creative activity would teach me how to work in a cell culture hood. All I learned was, and then they got it. They were like, I learned how to work in a confined space, or I learned how to set up my space. And those were the learning objectives. But when they first start looking at how am I going to get plastic bottles and a turkey baster, they just didn't connect. So it's clearly about making sure the reflection is there.
I do know we're at the top of the hour, so I do want to, for those of you that have to leave, and Barbara, I don't know if I had you, you might also be having to leave as well. But if somebody has to leave, I just want to say thank you to everyone. We can stay on for a little bit longer, I believe, and answer some more questions. But I just wanted to let everybody know that really appreciate you joining the session today. And so we'll keep going for a little bit longer. Any other questions? Any other hands coming up or in the chat?
Can I ask one, Ray?
Go ahead.
This is primarily to Barbara and Kristin, I think, but this semester we've been having some issues with asynchronous online classes not being as well received by students as synchronous. And I think both of you mentioned that your courses were primarily asynchronous. And I just wondered if you had any thoughts about synchronous versus asynchronous and which might be better for a group.
I'll start. Those are good points. You know, again, we've been doing it a while, so I think we're pretty good at making them interactive. But I do think you have to maximize on the technology. You know, certainly discussion groups, and and maybe there are times in asynchronous that you do see if there are groups of students that can meet for group products or projects or whatever. Our evals on a 1 to 6 scale, most of our courses are with higher scores representing better, more favorable responses. We're average about a 5.4 on our online asynchronous program. So that's pretty good. That's about the same as our synchronous. But I think, again, it's infrastructure, being really innovative, lots of technology, not narrated PowerPoints. I'm talking embed a lot of things in there that give the students a lot of different opportunities to learn. I probably had a better answer when we started 17 years ago, but we've been doing it a long time.
So I'm sorry, was it you're moving synchronous classes to now be asynchronous?
No, it was when we switched to doing everything virtual, or most things virtual this semester. We have some classes that were synchronous and some that were asynchronous. And it seems like the students struggle more with the asynchronous classes versus the synchronous ones.
I see. Yeah, I also think it depends on the student. It depends on the level of student. Their responsibility and their time management. I think I've primarily taught asynchronous at the graduate level, and they're much more motivated than the undergraduate students who
I think you're absolutely right. I mean, our programs are, you're either an RN already working, RN to BS, or graduate. It would not work, I don't think, as well in undergrad pre-licensure. Yeah.
But what Barbara said, I would just echo. If it's asynchronous, right, you can't just post a bunch of videos of talking through notes as if the students were there interacting with you. So I actually I create my own videos, and I add quizzes, or I add little things that they have to actually do while they're watching the video, so that they are much more engaged in the content. I think that helps. And for the asynchronous class, it has to be organized, I think, in very small little bite-sized pieces. And depending on the content, the student, the class, how small that is. Like I used to do daily agendas, daily objectives, so that they were checking into the class every day and had something to do. That was quite a bit of work on my part, but they stayed engaged throughout. I've relaxed that. It's a little bit more maybe half a week or weekly organization, but it really is on the instructor at that point to do a lot of organization and requiring engagement on the students' part so that they are engaged, because they're doing it whenever they want, but they still have to do stuff.
Tim, all of mine are asynchronous as well. So, but I do see where there is that divide between the students who are organized and know how to manage time and those that do not. And the happy medium between what Kristin was doing and me not wanting to baby them is I put reminders in a course calendar. So it'll pop up, hey, your assignment is due in a week. Hey, your quiz is due next week. So it automatically pops up, and that you can have it set as much reminder ahead of time as possible. But they don't like the asynchronous, many of them, because I don't know, it's not set in stone. They want that time.
And I wonder too if the difference is that both Barbara and Kristin had programs that were asynchronous from the start, whereas Judy, you had an in-class program that suddenly had to change. And that's what I think about happened with some of our students too.
Yes, I agree, absolutely. Yeah, and some of those students were returning students, so they had the benefit of having the in-person labs. Some of the students were new to the program, so you really had this mix. I also, of course, as all of our programs do, have a mix of ages and experience. So bringing back somebody who's later in their experience, not as familiar with the technology, or you have somebody who's younger with the technology but doesn't know how to manage time. So it's been all kinds of fun.
Amber, you had a question, I believe?
Yes, I did. This is for Kristin. You mentioned the gradescope.com, and I wondered how you're using that alongside Blackboard. I mean, is it totally separate? I'm intrigued.
It is totally separate.
Okay.
I do believe that you can integrate it with Blackboard. I don't have administrative privileges in our Blackboard system, so I have to go through our IT person, and we have, like probably most IT departments, is severely understaffed and overly stressed, especially with everybody now teaching everything online. So it's completely separate, but so in Blackboard, I just post a link to Gradescope. I post the assignment and then direct the students to Gradescope. So they do have to manage two separate platforms to get the course content from Blackboard, and then I send them to Gradescope to submit their homework. And in some classes, they actually take their exams through Gradescope, because I just don't like the Blackboard interface. It's
Okay.
just very difficult for me to use to grade.
Yeah, so we use Canvas here, so I don't know how different that would be, but I just wondered, what is so great about Gradescope? Like, what are you using?
So what I find so great about Gradescope, one, I would get when I would have the students submit their homework, they would submit PDFs of their work, whether it was taking a picture of handwritten work or converting computer output to a PDF. And I would get millions and millions of pages, separate files of PDFs that I would then have to, put into one file so that I could efficiently go through and sort through all of their work to find where was their actual answer. What is it they wanted me to actually grade? In Gradescope, you can actually set it up. I don't have to deal with downloading files and, sifting through all these multi-page or multi-file PDFs. It's all uploaded into Gradescope. I can actually set it up so that the students have to tell me where their answer is to a given problem. So when I'm going through and grading, it just automatically pops up to where their solution is, and I'm not sorting through. The other really great thing, and this is most useful for me, is I can actually typeset mathematics within Gradescope. Which is just awesome for me.
Okay.
I don't know if anybody knows LaTeX, but it allows me to just use LaTeX code in the comments. So I don't actually have to, because before, if I wanted to comment on, you know, solving some math problem, I would download a file, put it on my iPad, so then I could annotate, write on it, and then, you know, send that file back to the student. In Gradescope, I can actually type out the mathematics and I don't have to annotate. So it's just a huge time saver. And it lets you store comments. So if you know, students are making the same mistake, if I type out, you know, one response,
That's gold. That's
yes,
gold.
yes, it's saved and I can just pull it up and use it every time somebody makes that same error. Huge, huge time saver. Yeah, I literally, it has saved my life this semester. I cannot speak highly enough about Gradescope. And
So,
I'm not being paid anything by them, I promise.
This is not a paid endorsement.
No.
You know, with that, I think we could probably keep going, but I do want to respect everybody's time. I want to thank our speakers again. I will be touching base with each of the speakers in terms of seeing if they're comfortable with sharing their slides for today, and then we'll have that coordinated with Jeannie House at our who's our coordinator for the MPSMA program. And with that, I'm just going to turn this back over to Amber, and so she can remind us of the upcoming future sessions here.
All right, sure. So tomorrow, I hope everyone joins us, same time, 3 p.m. Eastern. We're going to hear from Jove, Benchling, and Labster. So some of those things that I think I saw in Judy's presentation today, they're going to be kind of showing us, you know, examples, case studies of those products. So it should be really interesting, and I hope to see you all there tomorrow. Thanks again for joining everyone today, and then also please do come back next Friday and support our students. Our PSM students will be giving their presentations on their capstone projects. So, all right.
Thank you, everyone.